The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question to the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is back in session. It is July 17th, 2026, and for today's video, we are going to do half news and half commentary. Why? You'll know sooner than later. But anyway, let's get into it. First of all, the Zaporizhzhia direction. The Russians are continuing to struggle in the area of Stepnogorsk. The armed forces of Ukraine are reportedly advancing in the village of Plavny, which is just north of Kamensky, which the Russians captured, I think, a year or so ago. And from this point on, they went to Stepnogorsk and for a while took over the town from the armed forces of Ukraine and used Stepnogorsk in turn as a springboard for an offensive into Primorsk. And they took that for a while. But then the armed forces of Ukraine then launched a counteroffensive. And as you all know by now, the Ukrainians have managed to undo most of the Dnieper group's offensive efforts in this area. And as a result, it looks pretty much like how we saw the front line in 2024, or instance. Older, more like. Sorry if I used the wrong words, but you get my gist. So, yeah, the AFU have successfully pushed the Russians back from the outskirts of the city of Zaporizhzhia, and I do believe they will not be that close again until like 2027. I just don't think the Russian army cares that much about this front line, unless, of course, they decide to take Orekhov this year, quicker than we expect they would, which would in turn lead to this front being revived again. But I honestly don't know if that's going to happen. So, other than that, though, not a lot of news going on in Zaporizhzhia direction. Mala Tokmachka is still contested. And there's also reports that the Russians are trying to cut off one of the last lifelines going from the northern part of Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions to the city of Orekhov. And as far as I know, clashes are still ongoing, and yeah, we don't have much news there. There's also reports that the armed forces of Ukraine have so far succeeded in another counteroffensive, this time in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Apparently they have recaptured Ternove and Berezovo, or Berezove, as they'd say in Ukrainian. But the problem, though, is that we cannot say for sure if any of this is factual information or not. So yeah, Syriac decided to play it safe and put it in his death zone. Well, on my map, it's literally a gray zone, or quarantine zone, as I jokingly called it, because the situation is so confusing. Like, we literally have no clue what's really going on over there. So, yeah, I'd suggest to any mappers right now to not really paint it at this time, and just wait. Maybe for like another month or so, and then you can paint it. But I have a feeling there's not really a lot of people in this area here within the Dnipropetrovsk region because it's all open fields. Thus, it's a turkey shoot for FPV drones. So yeah, not really worth my time. Ivanovka is confirmed to be recaptured by the armed forces of Ukraine, so I can agree with that. And then in Dobropila direction, not a lot of changes going on here, but all I can say is that things aren't looking good for the Ukrainians in Beletsky. I do believe Russians have control over a good chunk of it by now. But again, we need more informational, like evidence before we can paint this area like red or orange, as you see here on the Syriac map. And then going to Konstantinovka direction, Syriac for some reason has Dovobolka and Rozkishne in a gray zone. I don't really know if I can agree with that. Mykolaiv Pilia is still Ukrainian controlled according to Syriac, but Radov, though, has it under Russian control for quite some time. So this is kind of disputed. There's still no movement towards the city of Druzhkovka yet, but we can definitely assume that it's going to start probably in 1 to 2 months from now. Definitely before Halloween. And then here we are, the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk direction, what all of you have been waiting for since the start of this war in 2022. Well, this phase, that is, because the conflict itself has lasted for more than 12 years now, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I don't think the Russians ever got this close to the city of Kramatorsk since that time in 2014. But yeah, as you can see here, the Russians, after seizing control over the villages of Tikhonivka and Malinovka, are now battling it out for the height village of Vasyutinitske. Sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. Vasyutinitske. God damn it. But anyway, they're fighting for this settlement here. And AMK Mapping, who is a great source if you want to know like the details of like strikes in the Middle East and within Ukraine itself, his territorial maps are kind of suspect because of his bias towards the Ukrainians. But otherwise, though, I think he's a pretty good source for everything else. And I highly recommend checking him out if you haven't already. So, yeah, apparently the Russians have not only crossed the Donbas Canal, but now it seems that they are taking control over basically a lot of the heights that overlook both Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. And the last thing I heard from AMK is that the Russians now can see both cities and can now fire upon both with conventional like weaponry. Artillery shells, mortar fire, you name it. They can basically use the most conventional shit now on these two cities, which will in turn make it very difficult for anybody to reside or even hide there, like if they're involved in the fight itself. And according to Syriac, apparently the Russians are now basically at their furthest position within this settlement here. They are 5.5 square kilometers from the outskirts of Kramatorsk. That's fucking retarded. That is unbelievable. They haven't been this close in a very long time, as I mentioned earlier. And, you know, if they're able to take control over all the heights, basically everything here, I wouldn't be too surprised if maybe by late November, December, or something like that, maybe even sooner, October maybe, at the earliest, we might see a quick finish for both Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. I know that sounds very optimistic on my end, but considering how vital it is to hold these heights, I wouldn't be surprised if the Ukrainians just can't support these areas anymore due to logistical issues. And as I said, if they're able to take control over the heights, then yeah, it's basically game over for the AFU here, because the Ukrainians in turn won't be able to see the Russians firing upon them from the hills. And in turn, it will make being here a total nightmare, like a hell on earth. Like, why would you want to be here by then? They might just withdraw. And who knows, maybe Putin might even call it a day in Ukraine after they take Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. But I doubt it. I think the war is going to continue on in other places like Kharkiv and Sumy regions. And yeah, definitely Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. But ending in Donbas after these two are taken, I wouldn't bet on it. I just wouldn't. Now, we're going to skip over the Liman front because nothing is going on here. And same with Kupiansk front because, again, nothing has happened here in quite some time. Though we can assume Russia has pretty much retaken the entirety of Kupiansk. And then, yeah, going into the bordering regions here, again, not much has changed, but we can definitely assume is that Zakharivka and Volokivsky are both contested right now. Now, Syriac has not put any of these two villages here in a gray zone yet, but I would do that if I were him right now. Russians are a lot deeper than all of you think. like in the Kharkiv region, a lot deeper. And as a result, as I said in one of my past videos, this whole area here, like the northeastern part of Kharkiv region, is just going to collapse, and the AFU will have no choice but to flee towards, I guess, this town here, Shevchenkove. In the proper Kharkiv front, no changes were made in the town of Kozacha-Lopan. But what I can assume is that once after this is all gone, then this area here on the border is going to fall easily. And then perhaps maybe everything here too. So this is like Western Kharkiv region already. And then in Sumy region, like in the proper like Sumy front, little to no changes except the fact that Kendratovka is back under Russian control. So they have completely reversed the Sumy counteroffensive by the Ukrainians last summer. There's also little to no changes, too, in this part of the Sumy region. This is where Myropilia is. Ukrainians claim that they're still there, but I think they're lying. Their ass is off. And then in this part here, which is adjacent to Glukov, or Glukiv, Russians have reportedly begun clashes for the villages of Ulenovo and Yastrob Shanaya. I'm sorry if I, again, butcher pronunciations of those, but whatever. And there's also reports that they have also entered the village of Korinok. And finally, Mala Slobika. So yeah, that's going to do it for the frontline updates in Ukraine. Now, I want to talk about something that happened a couple or so days ago. Apparently, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Fedorov, he's from, for those wondering where he's from the Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine. He's from Vasilivka. This is where he was from. He was born and raised here during the Soviet era. I think he actually, as a kid, probably knew independent Ukraine more. I heard he's quite young, like born in like early to like mid-80s, so he probably doesn't remember the USSR too well. But anyway, getting away from that, he was fired. Apparently, he had a dispute with President Zelensky and the leader of the AFU itself, Syrskyi, over, well, meat. Now, as all of you know by now, the armed forces of Ukraine are having a manpower shortage. So they're not going to be able to man every part of the front line in eastern Ukraine, let alone the western part, should that ever come to pass. Fedorov's solution was to digitize the army, basically to rely less on human mobics, like human conscript, like soldiers. Like we're talking about guys just like forcefully taken off the streets, put into minivans, and then just sent to Donbas to die. That's what he wanted to deal with. And his solution was to introduce like more drones and more robots or something to replace infantry. I mean, he had a very unconventional way of looking at things. It was quite innovative. And he was quite popular because he wasn't putting too many guys at risk. And under his leadership, when he was the Minister of Defense, Ukrainians were able to push back the Russians, as far as I know, in Zaporizhzhia region and the Dnipropetrovsk region. So he did achieve some level of success. And also in Liman direction too. Can't forget that. But we have to remember that just because you want to roboticize your army doesn't mean it's going to 100% work. And the technology is just not fucking there yet for full-on Terminators. Now, if we did have the technology, then yeah, no one would be drafted right now, and Russians and Ukrainian governments would probably be using, Terminator robots, as I said, to fight out the war instead of having to shove guys up to the front line. But there's a problem. This ain't fucking Star Wars. like were use droids, like disposable like droids, like to send them out to die or to be destroyed on the front just to gain a few inches or something on the front line. No, we don't live in that reality. We live in this one. And the tech is clearly not there, and Zelensky thought that Fedorov was being retarded and Delulu. So he fired him. Syrskyi, of course, was happy about it. And as a result, Ukrainians from all over the country, going from Kiev to Lvov or Lviv, whatever you want to call it, Ivano-Frankivsk, let's see here, Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Kryvyi Rog, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkov, Sumy, Chernigov, Poltava, you name it. Most of the major cities in Ukraine went outside to protest even when they were under threat by Russian bombs and drones. They went outside to protest their displeasure with Fedorov being fired as Minister of Defense. And, you know, I feel like despite all the pressure that's being put on Zelensky right now to reinstate him, I don't think he's going to be allowed back. Well, if he does, then you can definitely throw an egg in my face for, I guess, for a potentially age like milk take. But I don't think he's going to bring him back no matter how much backlash he gets. Because if he were to bring him back, then Syrskyi might just, well, flat out resign. And then that would lead to another leadership crisis within the Ukrainian government itself. So he's not really going to win here. If he keeps Fedorov or gets rid of him, like keeps him out for good, he really, I don't know. I don't think he really has anywhere to go. And I think what probably got him fired was the recent strikes on the city of Odessa. Like, all their ports were getting wrecked by Russian drones, and I think that was what probably sent Syrskyi and Zelensky over the edge. And then it also doesn't help that Fedorov didn't save Konstantinovka. And they're also now having problems in the Kharkov region as well. And Sumy, don't forget that. So he wasn't necessarily perfect, but he was very popular amongst his people. And because of that, they're very angry. They're like as angry as Russian doomers would be about their Ministry of Defense. And that's another thing. I feel as if this recent event taking place in Ukraine really demonstrates to me just how overly similar they are to Russia. It's almost as if the corruption from the Soviet Union never really went away. And I'd argue that what you see right now can be traced back to the regime of Leonid Brezhnev, who, by the way, was Ukrainian. So I guess maybe that's where it all started. But I digress. But yeah, I think firing him is going to be a disaster. And will they bring him back? No, again, I don't think so. And just like Zaluzhny, he's probably going to be sent into exile and we'll never hear or see him again. And as a result, Ukrainians will keep on dying and they'll keep on losing more land. All for the sake of, well, good PR. Yeah, suckers. So anyway, let's talk a bit about basically the whole summer 2026 campaign. Now, as all of you know by now, I feel as if there's a clear strategy now, like, by both sides, like, where they want to go and shit. And as far as I can see, I feel as if the Russian army is not focusing that much on Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. I feel like that's more of the Ukrainians' priority when compared to the Russians. And the Russians, on the other hand, are more focused on taking more of Donbass and also, on the side, dealing with Kharkiv and Sumy regions. So, yeah, I feel like that is going to be their focus this summer. To clear out the remainder of Kupiansk, to take more of the northeastern Kharkiv region, and also to get closer to the city of Sumy. I believe that is the 2026 objective. Well, at least the summer objective, that is. And then maybe this fall they'll try to turn it around in Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk. But that, of course, is going to come down to, well, the circumstances in Donbas itself. Because we got to be very honest here, guys. The Donbas fortress belt, as people like to call it, or as I like to call it, the Slavyansk and Kramatorsk direction, is on its last leg for the armed forces of Ukraine. As I said, with those heights gone, it's very plausible that Battle of Slavyansk Kramatorsk could go on a lot faster for Russia than many people may think. And then once Donbas is gone for Ukraine, well, this part of Donbas, that is, what's to stop the Russian army of breaking out of Donetsk region entirely? They're just going to be able to enter southern Kharkiv direction, reach maybe Lazova, retake Izium, and of course, yeah, take more of Kharkiv region to the point where you might be threatening the provincial capital itself, which is not that far from the Russian border. And then you also have the Dnipropetrovsk region, which the Russians are in, but they haven't really fully secured their gains there yet. I feel as if Dnipropetrovsk may not be coming, well, more entirely until Dobropila is handled. Well, we can definitely say for sure right now that Kharkiv is in big trouble this summer, along with Sumy region. And then another thing I wonder, of course, is Zaporizhzhia. Is Zaporizhzhia now sidelined until 2027 because of the events that are unfolding, for instance, in Kharkiv and Donetsk regions? I think so. I just don't think Vostok and Dnieper groups have enough manpower to not only stop Ukrainian counteroffensive in this direction, but also to achieve any decisive victories this year. I mean, I would be shocked if they were able, despite all their problems, to take the city of Arekhov. If they're able to do that, then perhaps maybe there is a chance for a 2027 clash for the city of Zaporizhzhia, but I'm not really holding my breath. Some people assume that the Russians might just flat out give up on taking Zaporizhzhia city entirely and just simply accept that, we have nearly 3/4 of the region, so why should we then give a damn about the provincial capital? But I honestly don't think that makes any sense, because Zaporizhzhia Oblast, according to Russian constitution, its capital is Zaporizhzhia city. So they have to take it, because it's Russian law. Maybe they might change it just to exclude Zaporizhzhia city and then just declare Melitopol the new capital of, I guess, the region. But I honestly don't know if that's going to happen. And then as for Kherson, I don't really expect anything too major to happen, despite all the attempts by the Ukrainians to make noise here, like them trying to retake this part of Kherson region and Crimea. I feel like people are just going to disappoint themselves and just end up with another nothing burger. So yeah, I feel like we now have a clear understanding of what both Russia and Ukraine are going to do for summer and perhaps fall 2026. Russia will focus on clearing out the rest of Donbas, taking more of Kharkov and Sumy regions, while the Ukrainians, on the other hand, try to clear out the Russians in Dnipropetrovsk and also in the areas near Arekhov. So there you have it. So that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. So tell me in the comment section below what you think of the situation in Ukraine, and I'll see you all in a few days from now. So take good care of yourselves, and bye-bye. Peace out.